but the next thing I'm going to tackle are the improved bed clips that Dennis Brown designed. The ones I'm going to use here are the original, well, not the original ones, but the ones on his tutorial right now. There's also a magnet mod, which I now 100% recommend, because just the pain in the rear kind of problems I had trying to get these on. But by the end of it, I figured out a method that kind of sort of works to get them on. But if you have the magnetic version, it's as easy as printing it and sticking some magnets in it and just setting it on there. And then, of course, you have to calibrate it also, which I'll cover later. But without a script, I'm going to try to explain the purpose behind these. And if I do a bad job explaining it, Doc's going to ask me a question to help other people out there. But I guess they pretty much serve two purposes. And the first purpose is pretty easy to understand. You want to hold the bed securely in place so it doesn't wobble around. But the second one is what throws people off. And it's installing these clips allow you to perform a hardware calibration to make sure that each of these 3 bed leveling switches activate at the same throw distance. And why that's important is because the so-called automatic bed leveling of this printer doesn't always work too good from stock. Your ultimate goal is to print on the top of the print bed. That's what you want to do. But the sensors are located underneath the build plate. And so when you probe them by having the nozzle tap the top of the bed and then push it down a certain distance before it triggers one of these, the value that the printer is getting is not the top of the build plate. The value it's getting is whatever distance it has to push before one of these activates. And with the stock bed clips, you really have no guarantee that that's going to be the same distance for every bed clip, every tower. And so having these allows you to ensure that that's the same distance, because until you take care of that, everything that comes between the nozzle and the point this activates is going to affect your bed leveling. So that's why you want a smooth surface that's as flat as possible and that doesn't have any overlapping tape or anything over it. And that's why you want all these bed switches to activate at the same throw. And you might think that it's not enough to really matter, but we're printing at layer heights that are, let me find one that at the most are probably just a little bit more than the thickness of an index card. So it doesn't have to be off by a lot to mess you up.
Every micron counts.
Yeah, every micron counts. And so if you've messed with other 3D printers, you've probably heard of other types of probes like the BL Touch that actually touches the top of the bed, or inductive sensors that detect metal and return that value. And these are mechanical switches, so they all work differently. And so if you're building a custom 3D printer or modifying a current one, you have to take into account how the bed probe works, and then take that into account when you do your calibration for your printer. And on a Cartesian printer, it's very easy. Once you get the auto leveling probe set up and working right, you can get a even first layer pretty easily. But it's not that simple with a Delta 3D printer, because you start off at the home sensors, and then you do a bunch of math that makes a bunch of assumptions based on how square to the rails of the bed is and how long these arms are and how far it is between the nozzle and the arms and the carriages and everything else. And every little bit that any of those measurements are off inside of your firmware are going to ultimately affect the printer movement and the bed leveling. And that's why even after you fix the way these auto leveling sensors trigger, you still have to do some calibration. And a lot of people might try to calibrate the home sensors and other things without the bed switch mod. And that's a bad idea because most of the calibration methods I'm aware of all use readings from the bed switches in order to calibrate everything else. So if your readings are still garbage, the calibration that you get out of those readings are also going to be garbage. But, you know, the binder clips just sit there on the bare metal part of the bed. You probably can't see it well. When I go to install and calibrate, I'll move the camera closer, and it just holds the bed down. So there you have it. And now I'll talk some about the bed clips themselves, which I already said a bit about how I wish I'd gotten the magnetic versions instead. So first of all, when you print this, you want it to be pretty much a solid part. Dennis Brown in his tutorial gives you the exact print settings to use. But also, if at all possible, you do not want to print it with a raft because you want the bottom to be as smooth and flat as possible. Now, if you don't have any other choice but to use a raft because your bed leveling is that bad, then well, first try to print just one at a time in the center. And if you still have to use a raft anyways, maybe buy some sandpaper and try to get the bottom as smooth as possible. But
what about a skirt as well?
Oh, well, yeah, you can do a skirt because a skirt or a brim is fine. I printed these with a brim. Because a skirt just primes the nozzle for printing. It's not going to stick material underneath the printed part, and that's why I'm saying be careful with a raft, because a raft puts material underneath the part, and then there's a little air gap, and it prints on top of it, and you might get a little bit of warping on the base if you print with a raft, which usually isn't too big of a deal for most parts, but for a part that you're printing for the purpose of calibrating this printer, you really want the base as flat as possible. And you can see all the parts you need to install this in Dennis's tutorial or in the Grand Negus's Thingiverse tutorial, but first I'm going to take the slightly longer screw, and my lighting here is terrible. Maybe I can fix this a bit. Yeah, that's better. Well, it's a free video, and none of the popular YouTubers are spending more time on this printer, and I don't blame them because it's not going to get a lot of views. Nothing against them, though. I really like teaching tech. He did some great videos. Okay, yeah, so the problem I encountered, I guess, because I printed things differently this time than before with a different material and whatnot, was I had trouble getting this adjustment screw to go all the way down. So before you install the clips, you probably want to make sure that you can screw all the way through and tap this out. You don't want to over screw it because you do need it to fit in snugly, and so you can make fine-tune adjustments in the calibration, which you'll see later, but you also don't want to strip it out. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make sure I can screw it now through all the way, create a tap. There's a doorbell, probably UPS or something like that. So I'm using pliers because this is a screw I actually stripped out off screen. So this is pretty close to being about as far as you'll be able to screw it down. So I'm just creating threads. Alright, that's probably good. So now I'm gonna unscrew it. once again using, if I put this on night vision or something, I can't even, this is black and white or something. I must have pressed some buttons. Well, I'll fix that later, because I'm not re-recording this. And as in fix it, I'm not fixing this clip. I'll fix it for the next segment. Alright. So, got that out. Now I need to go get a fresh screw since I bought extras. Because especially if it's your first time, it's hard to learn from your mistakes if you haven't made them yet. Learn from mine. Now I'm just going to go ahead and pre-screw this to make sure that I can make fine-tuned adjustments with my Allen wrench. Yeah, I've still got some play in that binder clip, so I need to make sure I can actually tighten it. Yeah, and so that works. When you pre-tap the holes, you should be able to screw it in a lot more easily. First, I'm going to try to demonstrate how Dennis Brown tells you to do it in his tutorial. Then I'll talk about why that didn't work for him. We put that first screw in there, and then we're going to take the nut and just barely put it on. And got this hole here that I guess you're just supposed to kind of angle this a certain way and push it down in there. And I tried doing this, and every printer's manufactured a bit differently. I was able to get it on my first printer, but I just couldn't get it on this one for some reason. I pushed a bit, tried different angles. It just wasn't happening. Now you're going to get to watch me struggle using another method that took me a while, but it seemed to work okay. And the first thing I did, as you can already see, is I completely removed the build plate from the printer. Should be pretty easy to trace these wires directly from the build plate on the underside of the printer. I removed it because I'm going to be moving this every which way and I don't want to mess up the wires. And now I just need to see how easy or hard it is for me to try to get this to screw in. Let's see. Let's see if I can make this work. You know what, maybe, I think I tried something before where I had it partway sticking out and then I just rotated the bed clip to try to get it started. I think that worked pretty well on one of them. Okay, so oh man, come on, catch. Oh, yeah, I think it caught. I think this guy caught. Great. And now that it's caught, I'm going to see if I can lift up on it and tighten it a bit more from the top before I flip things over. I'm moving the effector. Once again, do all this with the printer turned off and unplugged, because you really don't want to move things around manually with it turned on or plugged in, because I've ruined a main board on one of my other printers by moving the carriages and stuff around while it was on. If I say main board, it's really the stepper drivers. So it's like, if you ruin the stepper drivers, you have to decide if it's worth it to buy all the equipment to basically install new stepper drivers on a main board, and whether it's worth the time to learn how to do all of that, or if you'd rather just buy a replacement for however much. It's supposed to be really easy with ramps boards, but these Monoprice Mini Deltas, they're really small, so when you start talking about doing more advanced or complicated mods or going out into the weeds, you don't have as much room to work with when you try to do those things. Well, I got it started a good bit to where I don't think that screw's going to fall out. So now I'm going to flip it back over, take this off, remove the black tape that I've put on the inside. So I've removed the index card and the black tape. I can see where the nut's caught on the inside. I'm not going to try to screw it from the inside. I have some small pliers somewhere, but I put them somewhere and I don't remember where I put them, so I'm just going to have to make this work. And so I took everything off, and I'm just going to take this Allen wrench and I'm going to gently push it to kind of turn it in the correct direction as far as I can to get it to, and you can't see any of this because these holes, when you look from the inside, they're underneath each of the stepper motors, so I'd really need like the perfect camera angle and perfect lighting to do that, and I have no aspirations to be a big YouTuber. I want to help people who need some extra help. That's all. Maybe you can hear me flapping the nut with this ride. Yeah, I know exactly how that sounded. Sometimes I say stuff like that by accident, sometimes it's intentional. Okay, that's reasonable. It's still not as tight as I want it. Oh, one of my cats entered the room. He might start eating 3D printer stuff and vomit. So if you hear something weird, that's what it is. I could have sworn I just felt something fall out, but it wasn't the nut that I have attached. So now I'm going to put this back here, and I should be able to, and I kind of want to push it back some when I screw it in, because I don't, especially since I use the cheap 5-inch hobby mirror, I don't have a lot of room for error. That's why I'm a much bigger fan of the 120 millimeter borosilicate glass, because you can see through it when you install it, and it gives you enough extra clearance on the bed without getting in the way of properly installing these bed clips. So, you know what, before I keep doing this, it looks like I never did put the actual binder clip on this clip, and I don't want to do that after I've spent all my effort getting this in there. I mean, you should see the slots of where this goes. Okay, so now I'm going to lift. I'm going to put this back together, and then I'll start the calibration process. I'm going to, I don't remember exactly what direction these wires were in, but it's not going to matter because I'm going to calibrate everything. But when putting this stuff back together, you want to make sure everything's tucked away nicely, because if anything gets caught between the bottom of this and the bed, it could mess with your bed leveling because the switches are beneath the bed. Something I can't say enough. Cannot stress that enough.